Yo, he tried to act like he wasn't gonna make it
Yo, I even tried to dip off real quick. I
tonight.
didn't know you
Yeah. Nah,
pressed
nah,
the
nah. We
button.
see you. The good people see you out there.
You pressed that button kind of fast, man.
Yeah, that's all right though, man. You got to be ready. You know what I'm saying? What's up, good peoples?
What's good with you, bro? What's good with you?
Man, how you feeling?
I'm feeling awesome. I'm feeling awesome. I'm gonna hit this light real quick. Oh,
Oh, here we go.
yes. See, y'all wasn't even ready for that.
Nah, they wasn't ready. Hey, man, I broke our rule, yo.
Yeah, I'm not
I
surprised.
I got a collared shirt on tonight.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Somebody beat
See,
you up. It better be
let me
somebody
no no no
who's.
no 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 no. Stop the madness. Let me explain. Let me explain. Good
Yeah,
people
yeah,
out there
yeah.
in the level up past corporate trauma community, just so you know, right? We are advocates of family, work life, not balance, but integration. If you can
Mhm.
integrate your life with what you do for a living that includes your family, then you're not doing something right. So,
Best believe.
in respect to that, tonight was my son's seventh grade basketball athletic banquet. So we had to
Nice.
push it back an hour. We usually come on at 7 live, but we did it at 8 tonight to accommodate my presence at my mini me's basketball banquet,
Which is what it's about.
which is what it's about. It's hilarious. It's hilarious, right? You want to hear what the coach said about him?
What did he say?
He said we're really proud of this young man. Got
Hmm.
a lot of potential. He's going to be a great guard combo next year in the 8th grade, right?
Mm.
Expecting a lot of great things out of him, but we especially want him to allow his game to do his talking, and not
Uh,
his and not his talking to do his talking.
so he didn't say, but it's hard. Like I watch my dad every weekend when he on his podcast, so I figure he told me to bring myself to the workplace, and this is
Mm,
my workplace.
yeah, but hey, listen, at there's a certain point where you gotta just play.
Hmm.
You know what I'm
That's a fact.
saying?
That's a fact. That is a fact.
And that's all right. We he did really well this year.
That's
So
awesome.
that's why I got my collared shirt on tonight.
Awesome. Yeah, I hit the skating rink up tonight and was trying to show my kids how to RJ and Lauren how to skate, but it was like torpedoes out there, man. Like the other kids, they was flying and falling so much, and I was like, man, we gonna have to come. I'm gonna have to come back with y'all another day. So because what I'm not doing is being taken out and falling on somebody's kid, because that's probably what's gonna happen.
Wow.
So yeah.
Well,
That's
that's
cool though.
good, man.
That's cool.
So, man, we both actually have been traveling.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
Midwest, East Coast. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Which is interesting, right?
Yeah.
Uh oh. Hey, look, people.
What
He
happened?
got he, he got the wig cut. You know what I'm saying?
This dude is hilarious. The wig cut.
Yeah,
Word.
yeah, man. Look, I got to do mine too, man. Sheesh.
Hey man.
But
Trying to make it.
but that brings up a an interesting thing, man. There is, people are outside. Uh,
Oh, heavy. Heavy. People outside
People
heavy.
are outside, which is interesting because we're still in the midst of a pandemic, right? And the numbers justify in a lot of people's minds. And I'll be honest, I'm more comfortable now than I was before. Like I still got my mask on and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? Not advocating one way or the other. I mean, I, you know, listen, wear your mask. Right? I mean, that's just my position. Regardless of which side of the fence you're on, you can't go wrong with wearing your mask in public.
But
Uh,
it's drastically down. It's
Bruh,
They said it's like only 50,000 people or something along those lines that either were in the hospital or just reported having COVID um this week, which was
And,
which was down 50% from the week before or something like that. So,
and at the end of the day, man, people not being sick is a good thing.
so with that being said, I got something for you.
Okay, talk to me.
Um, and it'll relate to all that we talk about.
Okay.
If you don't take something serious when it first becomes an issue, if you don't acknowledge something and give it the true, that's the word I'm looking for, Jamal, the true attention,
Right.
it will linger,
Right.
right? So here's the craziest thing about COVID. And this is now it makes sense when you talk about viral infections like the flu.
Mm-hmm.
I'll also throw in there HIV, even if it's not a viral infection, but I know it impacts the immune system.
Right.
But at some point in time, just like the flu, no, just like COVID, the flu popped up at one point in time. Now back then, people wasn't talking, they probably wasn't communicating as much, and it was just, hey, people getting sick, and maybe there's some folks who are dying, whatever the case may be.
Right.
Same thing when we watch those movies and they talk about in the 1980s with HIV and AIDS, and they said that it was something that only gay folks or gay men can get, and didn't give it the proper attention that it needed,
A quarantine.
right? Didn't have folks quarantined, didn't say, hey, it's transferred, and maybe they just didn't know, but we know some people knew something. The same way with COVID, some
Right.
people knew how serious this could get, but
Right.
they assumed that it would not do what it did.
Right.
How does that relate to this podcast and the work that we do? There are people who understand the impact of how they treat you. There are people who understand the impact of how they operate in the workplace, but they assume that the consequences are not that dire. The consequences are not that serious for them.
Right.
And then when they turn around and the great resignation is happening, when they turn around and so many women have left the workforce in general, when they turn around and you start to get black, brown, and all different shades of people to recognize that, we're more than cogs, you know, these are things that could have been handled differently to have a better result. The idea that the president of the United States says, hey, we got to get rid of this work from home thing and get people back into our great cities. And as always, you don't own me, sucker. Right. And right. And I'm a
Yeah.
Democrat. And listen, and I tell people all the time, I'm more Democrat than anything else. But what I do know is I don't like for people to encroach on things that are none of their business. I don't owe any city my gas money, my tax money. You know what I mean? Where I spend my money is on me. And so we gotta really be conscious of the folks at work and the powers that be and what they feel like they need from us for the system to work. And we got to start to figure out what our system is and how we can make that work for us instead of being just the cogs for these other people.
Absolutely. To address your first point, man, a cold turns into a pneumonia if it's not given the proper
Hmm.
attention,
Hmm.
especially if your immune system may be compromised.
That's a fact.
Same thing in the workplace. Uh, Long before the worldwide pandemic,
Hmm.
the workplace, the immune system, that thing, that the culture, I hear you always talking about the culture,
Hmm.
is the professional sector's immune system that protects,
Hmm.
right,
Hmm.
the environment and the people in that environment
Hmm.
from outside variables and invaders, right, to damage the integrity of the infrastructure. So there can't be a great resignation if the culture and the presence of corporate trauma was addressed long time ago. And you know what's interesting too, right? It just the pandemic. We said this several times, just exposed the issue and the problems. I spoke about this a couple Saturdays ago at a speaking engagement, and I talked about corporate trauma is the is a condition.
Mm.
It's the effect,
Hmm.
right? What's the cause?
Yep.
Yeah,
What's the
what's the cause?
cause?
The cause is that old narcissistic top down management and way of running things that
Yep.
people of color in particular
Hmm.
and in extreme and an extreme significant voice in the workplace has been women. Shout out to all of those that identify as women for Women's History Month. March is Women's History Month. Shout out
Hmm.
to you all, and we acknowledge that the corporate trauma community is overwhelmingly made up of women, in
Yep.
particular women of color. But
Yeah.
women have been talking about the need for what we are now saying diversity, equity, and inclusion
Hmm.
long time ago, and now life after the murder of George Floyd, where a lot of these organizations, right,
Hmm.
like how the pandemic relates to the Great Resignation,
Hmm.
right? The murder of George Floyd impacted diversity, equity, and inclusion in the
Big time.
workplace, and those
Yeah.
initiatives. But what they're realizing is even with initiating these um, the presence of DEI in the workplace through initiatives,
Hmm.
through programming, and then hiring directors, managers, and executives to cover DEI in the workplace. It's too late.
Hmm. Yeah.
A lot of our DEI professionals are going in and saying it's just too late. It's just too much work to be done. You know why? Because we didn't do it 30, 40, 50 years ago. So now those that are in leadership and have been in leadership for so many years and decades, Rob,
Hmm.
they're not giving up the helm. And now it's going to be an abrupt shift. It's going to
Hmm.
be an abrupt shift because the that idea is quickly being retired, just
Yeah.
like the approaching retirement age of those that did not listen 30, 25 years ago, whom are in leadership right now
Yeah.
and finally see fit, right? And I'm painting this picture with a broad brush, and oversimplifying it, for the sake of time in this particular broadcast. Maybe we need to get into it at a different time. But man, uh, it's really a paradigm shift that's happening, and something new is on the horizon. That's how I would respond to what you said.
So here's the craziest thing, and I think this the piece folks gotta. I'm gonna hit y'all with something real quick, and I want y'all to know where y'all heard it first. Unless there is a mass movement of people to this country that look like those who have been in charge for a very, very long time, it's going to get much, much, much more browner. I have no idea what people plan on doing about that, how they plan on moving, but I do feel like there are some things out there that are happening that may make that mass influx of people happen. But for companies, if you allow managers, middle managers, etc., to only focus on today and this year, you will not be ready when the workplace and the workforce changes, and
And
you
it's
will be
changing.
behind the eight ball, and it will no longer be we're looking to diversify, that's why we want to bring you in. People might put up with that now, but in 20, 30 years they're going to say, if you're not there Yet, if you're not there already and going to the next level, I'm not doing business with you. I'm not working with you, and I'm definitely not spending my money with you. So it's an like it's a very very important situation, and I think a lot of folks aren't paying attention to, where they just assume the business practices of yesterday are going to be accepted tomorrow, and that's not going to be the case.
Not gonna be the case.
Yeah.
It's I can't even. This generation that's getting ready, this generation of young people that's getting ready to inherit professional leadership,
Hmm.
they're not built like that,
Hmm.
right? You know, this generation, the generation I come from, we did what we was told, or else.
Hmm.
This present generation, which is a couple of generations behind me,
Hmm.
you gets told what to do, and they ask why.
Hmm.
And it's not a defiant, disrespectful type why. It's like, yo, for real, I don't understand the difference, right? I need you to help me cross-reference the difference
Hmm.
between what I want to do and what you're asking me to do,
Hmm.
because they're not lining up.
Hmm.
And when you engineer that cross-referencing, what we sometimes have been accustomed to asking people to do
Hmm.
does not make sense.
Hmm. Hmm.
You, this is the internet. I got fiber optic cable service in my neighborhood, and a laptop with a Core i10 first generation processor. Why do I got to drive downtown? That
Word.
doesn't make any sense
Hmm.
anymore, right? Unless there's ulterior motives. And this kind of brings us to our point, man. What I wanted to talk to you about tonight, and we want to bring
Hmm.
the podcast. You know, a couple of my last few two, to be exact, corporate trauma
Hmm.
word of the days. You know, y'all, if you haven't checked them out and you're listening, go to corporate trauma underscore convo and check it out on Instagram. You can go to
Hmm.
Carbonado Coaching on Facebook and check it out.
Yep.
And then you can also check it out under Jamal Theory on LinkedIn, right? So my most recent corporate trauma word of the day, Rob, is the corporate identity crisis. In this day and time where business is changing, people's attitudes is changing,
Hmm.
the culture of the corporate industrial complex is being forced to change. Um, how we do business, what's now a commodity versus what used to be a commodity, has a
Hmm.
lot of big organizations, right, in flux,
Hmm.
totally outside of their comfort zone and trying to figure it out. You know, what does it mean now? And most importantly, what's it going to mean 2 years from now, 5, 10, or 25 years from now? Or we have to prepare our stockholders, our stakeholders,
Hmm.
and our employees that we're gonna have to, we're gonna have to sell off all our assets and shut down shop within the next few years because if we don't figure it out. For example, um, because because of you know, like let's just take the airline industry.
Hmm.
Being around people and in crowds and in small cramped places
Yeah,
means something very different
definitely.
than it did 2 years ago,
Hmm.
right? We are 7 days. We are exactly 1 week out from the 2 year anniversary of the pandemic jumping off, right?
When the NBA saved the world, that is
And
correct.
the NBA saved the world.
Yep.
Rudy Gobert,
Yep.
Donovan Mitchell,
Yep.
and I forget the third player.
Hmm.
Like there's a lot of organizations that are in flux, are having to reinvent themselves, build the airplane while it's flying, so to speak, right?
Hmm.
And it is putting stress on the individuals inside of the organization with things that are absolutely outside of their control. And
Hmm.
there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of people just, they're staying put. They didn't go start a business. Or if they did start a business, it's not full time. They're still, you know, moonlighting with a job, but it's being stressed.
Yeah.
It's stressful, right? And
Yep.
because of this corporate identity crisis, um, and role in the corporate marketplace is changing, people's
Hmm.
jobs are changing, or not changing rapidly, and you got people doing the same thing they was doing 2 years ago, and it's pretty much irrelevant at this time, and
Hmm.
it's causing vulnerability for corporate trauma to take place. My advice, and I'm see my advice to all of those who may have seen it, and to those especially who didn't see my post, is to take it easy, take a deep breath, relax, be patient,
Hmm.
and at the very least, in the immortal words of Marshawn Lynch, just show up so you don't get fined. You know what I'm saying? Because we scrambling.
Yeah.
And a lot of these organizations got people scrambling to do what does not make sense. When really you just need to be still and
Mm.
let it play out. I'm not saying not do your job, but if doing ABC
Hmm.
does not make sense anymore and they're asking you to do ABC, then you may have to do ABC long enough for those that are asking for ABC to realize that we need actually LMNOP. You see what I'm saying? We still do ABC, but LMNOP is really what we need to be doing. And then
Hmm.
you have to allow the organization to catch up to that fact and not stress. See it for what there is. And one of the and I'll hush up on this point.
Are you
Um,
good?
Sometimes you got to help people fail. You're not in
Mm.
control. It's not your call, even though you might be right.
Hmm.
And we cause ourselves stress by trying to resist what we're being influenced to do, even though you may know that what we're being influenced to do may not necessarily be the right move.
Hmm.
Sometimes you have to do what you're being asked to do to help people fail so that they can see the change that they need to make.
Mm. So what I'm hearing is don't save her. She don't wanna be saved. Don't save her. She don't wanna be saved. Don't
Don't
save her.
save her.
Right? So ultimately, when you realize, and I'm gonna say it how I know I hear it.
Right, right, right.
When you realize someone is as dumb as a doorknob, and they might be your manager, your supervisor, your director, your
And we don't
CEO.
mean dumb as in intelligent. We mean functional, like really.
Okay. Yep. However you just said it. Yeah, that dumb.
Yeah.
And if you ever realize you will hear people in companies and they'll say, "Yo, he just does some I don't know why he does or she does these different things that they do." And I'm always having to clean it up or make sure that it doesn't go bad. Sometimes it needs to go bad so that person understands that the way that they move does not work or there's a better way of going about it. But if they have all these awesome people around them, sometimes they don't face the fact that it was the awesome people that made it happen, who executed it, not the idea that you gave them. Right.
Under
And
the
that's
radar, even
correct. Correct. And
under
there's
the
a lot of
radar.
it. There's a lot of that, bro. There's a lot of that where people who are in charge, you know, would truly believe that the things that they've put in place are the reason that things are going well. Well,
Not the case.
maybe in indirectly, you made a bad. You came up with something that was just completely off the mark, which prompted other people to create something that dealt with your off the markness.
Bag of lemons. Yes, you gave me a bag of lemons, fam.
Mm-hmm.
I went and got the water and the sugar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's
But what
correct.
you gave me was a bag of lemons.
You
And
wasn't even
because
thinking about it.
you wasn't even thinking about it, and because not only did I make a bag of lemons, I hit you off with a little bit of, you know what I mean, 15% of that
Mm-hmm.
lime juice in there. So you tasting it, you like, yo, this got a little something different to it. Because I didn't use all lemons. I used some lime in there too.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have creative uh I have some creative um expertise there to kind of
Mm-hmm.
address it.
That's a fact.
But you
That's a
think it's
fact.
you. Corporate identity crisis. Don't let that thing stress you out. Because at the end of the day, it's gonna play out. And I know what you're thinking. You know, what if I get fired, right? What if they hold me accountable? What if they manipulate, right? The 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 key performance indicators to slant negatively towards me. Guess what? If that happens,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't need to be there in the first place.
Here's also the craziest thing, man. But if what if I get fired? And it's like, well, would you rather take the raft off the Titanic before it hits the iceberg, or you want to try and get on the raft after it hits the iceberg? Right? And sometimes when you realize that you're somewhere with people who may lack common sense, because common sense is only common when you have something in common, right?
Right.
You truly have to understand the situation that you're in and decide if you're better off being there with the nonsense or jumping to somewhere else and seeing if it's a better fit. And it's so often, especially in the past, definitely before COVID, where folks settled for situations because it was home for them,
Mm,
right? It was, this is the family for them. Where family, you put up with some things and you go through some things because this is who you were blessed to be a part of the family with.
right.
Work, you signed some paperwork and you said, I'm gonna show up and give you my time and you will give me funds in return.
Hmm.
Those are two different places, those are two different things. And so often we get them confused and we show loyalty for people who they don't forget that relationship, but we often do.
We often do.
Yes,
We
very,
often
very
forget.
much so.
We often forget, right?
Hmm.
Um, if anybody grew up being a fan of Peter Pan, right? It was,
Hmm.
Peter Pan, the Lost Boys, battling against Captain Hook,
Hmm.
but the difference maker, right,
Hmm. Hmm.
was Tinkerbell and
Tinkerbell.
that damn pixie dust, right?
Yeah.
That magic. And then
Hmm.
every now and then Tinkerbell, right,
Hmm.
will bring the crew with her. The other
Hmm.
the other fairies,
The other
like
fairies.
small, unassuming. You don't know. We don't even know what pixie dust is, but it was the difference maker. And see, sitting up in these organizations, man, you got people who are smart,
Yep.
unassuming, that you don't even realize that they have um, a bag of pixie dust that's making your marginal or poor decisions make it pop. Because at the end of the day, it's not about uh, the process as much as it is the result. Because we have built a culture in some of these organizations that the process don't matter,
Hmm.
right? But there's people underneath the radar that's paying attention to the process. I got to take notes on this. I got to keep that, because at the end of the day, at any given moment, somebody's gonna come and ask me to make this happen,
Correct.
right? And it could be inconvenient. So, man, my advice and I'm gonna go back to it is in this day and time with this corporate identity crisis going on, and people
Hmm.
are pushing the envelope on things that do not make sense. But results is needed at the end of the day. People's investments are at stake, people's lives are at stake, people's livelihoods are at stake. Sprinkle some of that pixie dust on it, and if that don't work, like what I mean,
Hmm.
you might have to Captain Hook might have to win a couple battles.
That's true. That's definitely true, and that's the piece we struggle with because we end up feeling that, man, you feel like you're taking the loss with them,
Right.
where the true loss is the one you experience every day,
Yes.
right?
That's so powerful. You gotta say that one again.
We look at it as, hey, man, if I let this fail, if I don't use the pixie dust, to use your analogy of Tinkerbell, if I don't use the pixie dust for what we had, for the actions that's in front of us, if I don't use my special powers to fix this nonsense that they have us in, we'll fail. But we sit, you know what I mean, in everyday interactions and interacting with these different people and working, we failing every day by accepting nonsense
Right, right,
all day every day. But then when it comes down to their bad decisions, we're trying the best to throw them a life jacket or to fix something that a lot of times is above our pay grade, but we don't give ourselves the same grace. We don't do what's necessary for ourselves to get to the next level, to be awesome, to get out of the rat race. We accept it as if that's okay, and that's usually
right.
where our issue is.
Yep. And if you're really in a tight squeeze, and I understand because I've been there,
Hmm.
do what you can within your control
Hmm.
and document what you may not have been able to impact positively with respect to the variables that are not in your control, and have that narrative. May work, it may not, but you'll be able to sleep at night, not taking on somebody else's issue. And speaking of taking somebody else's issue, right? And poor decisions that Rob is talking about. Now, I want to also bleed this into, because of everything that's going on, and this is not new, right? There's corporate manipulation, right? There's professional. I mean, people just lie, but I don't know. I don't know how better to say it. People just lie, right?
Hmm.
There's this thing out there called this. It started with respect to communication, and it may have come out of the military industrial complex. I don't know where it came from, right?
Hmm.
But people who are existing in a hierarchy of leadership that also reflects authority, who's in charge of who and who's in charge of what, right?
Hmm.
There was a thing that was once that came out of somewhere, and then I had to do my research to figure out exactly where it came from, right? The dotted line, solid line reporting.
Hmm.
It used to be in respect to communication. Organizational structures would put things into place, right? That would tell Robert, hey, all right, you have a dotted line and a solid, you report or you communicate with this or these individuals, but because of your job and your responsibilities, you have a dotted line to these individuals because it's important for them to communicate with you to know what you're doing or what you know because it has an impact on their department, their job, or
Hmm.
whatnot. Right? Nowadays, the dotted line, solid line communication concept has turned into companies making an excuse to make individuals think that they have one job when they have two or more. No. You just have a dotted line to Robert, but you really report to Jamal.
Mm-hmm.
But Jamal and Robert are in charge of two entirely different business
Different
units,
functions. Yep.
two different functions. And guess what? They're not communicating with each other about you or about each other's function, and there's no synergy between the departments, even sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you, as an individual contributor or a direct report, have a solid line to one and a dotted line to the other? Let me tell you, because you have two different jobs. Because somebody, right? Because somebody thought it to be more economical and fiscally efficient to pay one person to wear two hats. Right? You
Mm-hmm.
hear that now? I got a couple of different hats. Well, that's fine. Am I getting paid? I mean, do I expect you to pay me for two full-time jobs? No. I mean, we're in a crunch. But as let's say I make 50 grand a year
Mm-hmm.
and Rob makes 50 grand a year, but Rob leaves the organization and the organization says, well, Jamal has been here long enough where he can do his job and Rob's job,
Which is
and
true.
we can save 40 grand. Just give
Mm-hmm.
Jamal an extra 10, give Jamal an extra 15.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, Rob leaves the organization.
That's not how it goes.
That's
That's
not,
not how it goes.
that's not how it goes.
I don't know, man.
What you think? But do you see? But it's and people are swallowing this hook, line, and sinker. Like, yo, I have a dotted line of um, authority reporting to the CFO, but
Mm-hmm.
I also have a solid line because I work in HR. What does the finance and human resources? How do they fit with each other? I mean, there's some alignment, but there's two totally different job functions.
So, so there's a couple of things. One, if that happens to me, I have to be able to take a step back and say, okay, what's my benefit out of this? Outside of the money, is there something that I can get that intangibles, tangibles, whatever the case may be? What's the value for me by taking on these larger responsibilities, no title, no money, right? Because ultimately we got to look at it and put our business hat on that we're always talking about. The company is consistently looking for ways to hold on to more money, more capital, and to grow.
Right.
As individuals, our issue is we let most of the things that happen for us and to us be dictated by others. So once somebody says you're going to take on this other role, then my first thing is, so is this preparing me for something?
Mm,
Right? So I take on this other role, the company saves a large part of this other person's salary. What is the benefit for me?
mm-hmm.
And when they say, well, it's the money, then the next thing is, well, that money that you're giving doesn't equate to the level of work and
And value.
time
And value.
and value, but most importantly, time
Time.
that I
Right.
have to commit to this. So what I need to understand is if you're looking to save money on my time, help me understand, right? And it doesn't have to be a combative situation, but if you're looking for this partnership and for me to understand the value that I bring to the table because I can offer something else, then help me understand, is there something here where this sets me up for something bigger? Is there, on the back end of me doing all these things well, do I ultimately end up overseeing the department? Is there some leadership that comes along with this, or are there other doors that open? And if so, what's the time frame?
What's the time frame?
Right, so let's
What's
let's
the time
plan
frame?
let's plan this out. And when they say, well, we never thought about it like that, and then now you have to make sure without getting upset, and you have to say, well, that's an issue for me.
Right.
because ultimately I'm the person that's expected to sacrifice to make all of this work, and nobody thought about what the benefit for me was. You
And
know what I
if
mean?
I pull it off,
Correct.
if
Right.
I can turn this bag of lemons into some lemonade,
Correct.
if I pull a handful of this pixie dust out my
Correct.
satchel, right,
Hmm.
I am now more valuable
Correct.
than I was before this thing started.
Hmm.
So and what I see a lot of professionals doing, because we're well meaning, right? And then sometimes just undertrained and underinformed, will take on the multiple hats and accept the dotted line, solid line reporting
Hmm.
and not even ask, well, how long am I going to do this? Right? You have a right. You have a right to ask.
You
I
do.
learned recently, if you're in a job function as a leader or as an individual contributor, like we'll exclude entrepreneurs and other entrepreneurial professionals from this equation. But if you, from an HR perspective, it is a compliance issue and a violation if out of the blue, based on your job function, you now have a tracking mechanism, right?
Hmm.
Or a micromanagement observatory type, let's just call it like a spreadsheet, or somebody's keeping track of something out of the blue. That's against compliance from an HR perspective. You know why? Because they didn't prepare you to be successful at what they're measuring. And to just introduce a measuring tool to you is a setup. And sometimes we don't even question these things. And it's funny because HR professionals know that I'm telling the truth. Like, you can't just do that. You can't just spring that on
Yeah.
Robert. You know what I'm saying, Robert? How many I's did you dot and how many T's did you cross today? And Rob's like, well, I did 20. And today, and there's a plan on the table for 35. Or what does that matter? No, we check it because the goal is 50 a day.
Hmm.
The goal is 50 today, but you didn't tell me nothing about that. Why are you measuring it? And what is the measurement, and what and where'd you come up with the bar measurement from?
Hmm.
Where does that information come from? And how does that make me successful? Or
And now,
why does that mean that I'm successful at my job? Because I'm assuming that's why the goal is in place all of a sudden out of the blue, because it denotes being successful at my job. Like, if you can't
mhm.
explain that, don't accept it.
See, when we're at places and we're working with people who don't consider us partners, we have issues. So like that's the biggest piece for me. It's sort of like off that TV show, South Park. Respect my authority. I think that's
Right.
what the
Yeah,
little
yeah,
kid says, right? It's one of those things where it's like, man, like they really don't respect what I bring to the table.
right.
So it's those things when we kind of sit back and we realize, like, yo, I'm not at the table to decide these things, but I'm expected to execute on them.
Mm,
And a
mm.
lot of the people who are asking me to do them have never done them before. Right? So even if we think about
Oh, God.
folks who might be in HR or somewhere else, and like I've said this to people before, the idea if you're a recruiter or you're in D&I or you're in some function that deals with people, having someone try to tell you how to do certain things because they believe it's all common sense, but have never done it themselves is an issue for me. I can't go and tell an engineer how to engineer. I can give them ideas. I can say, hey, well, you ever thought about it like this? And they'll say, Yeah, thought about all that. Or they'll say, no, I never have. But what you can't have is someone who doesn't do what you do, drop the hammer on what you do as if they have the authority in that section.
Mm,
Right now, granted, if it's your company, then it's your company. You can be
right. Do
wrong
what
all
you want.
day,
Do
right?
what
You
you
can be
want.
wrong all day, but I can't go and tell someone who's a plumber. You know what I mean? I can ask questions and I can say, "Well, you sure that's right?" And then when
Yeah.
he or she fixes the toilet, then I got to sit back and say, "Man, now he is the professional,
Yeah.
right?"
Flint, Michigan. Somebody said use PVC pipe.
That's a fact.
Somebody said that at a certain
That's a
point.
fact.
And somebody said, no, we're going to keep these lead joints in place.
Correct. Correct. Right. And there's a good possibility the people who were looking at the budget may have found someone who may have been a plumber or or a civic engineer who said, okay, you could do it like this, but it's going to come back to bite you later on. And that person probably said, well, I won't be here for that.
Mm, heard that one before.
Right? Haven't you? Haven't you? So a lot of times the reason that people don't say anything to the people who are the managers is because they're like, well, by the time this goes bad, I won't be here, i.e., financial crisis, right? When you think about how many folks was like, hey, well, oh, take this loan, you'll be fine,
Right.
and they're like, well, listen, in their mind, they believed in the system as well. Well, look, as long as the housing prices don't go down, so as long as housing prices don't go down, you can always sell. You'll be good.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Because,
but that's also what they sold themselves that. They
right,
didn't. They wasn't just selling the customer that.
they're selling themselves that.
They were selling themselves. What's the story? And that's the thing. Like I make sure I'm always asking myself, I'm like, man, what's the story that I'm selling myself on this? What in the world made me think that these were the people I wanted to rock with? I keep pounding the table with everybody I know, and everybody that knows me outside of this podcast know I'm always like, man, we do not have a lot of time to be arguing and talking about juking and jiving with suckers.
No.
You don't, because when this thing is over, how did Eddie Murphy say it? The upper room, right? When this thing is when this whole thing is over,
You're not going to be talking to me about that stuff.
this is it.
Yeah, you.
Like you gone. You can't come back like you're in Ghost.
Uh-uh.
Everybody be swearing they gonna come back and hunt. Man, this thing be over just as soon as it started, and you be sitting over here, you floating to wherever you going. He be like, man,
No, sir.
they didn't replace me.
When it's done, it's done.
They didn't replace me. I'm, I didn't get y'all the best years of my life.
And when it's done, it's done.
And when it's done, it's done. And when you view it from that standpoint, you look at it a little bit differently. Like, man, like, yeah, give me a bank. Like, and I was saying to somebody else yesterday, how you start is not usually how you finish. Wells Fargo started as a stagecoach company.
That's right.
Wells and Mr. Wells and Mr. Fargo probably had no idea that they'd be a bank in banking,
Retail banking at that.
retail banking at that. You look at all these different things, and you kind of realize when GE got started, they probably had no idea that they would have a bank and they'd be selling um all these different appliances. Like when this thing is over, when you gone, and whoever's in charge is in charge, and they'll take care of the rest. We
Right.
got to make sure we take care of ourselves and make things make sense.
Yes.
Live today, prepare for tomorrow.
And see, you said something really key that it stands out in my mind, and I'm glad you said it. You said something in reference to not being treated like a partner. And see, that is the ideal situation for anybody that may find themselves in employment, right? You're not working for yourself. You may be working on it. You may be working on it, but you may still be working for somebody. The ability to maneuver as a leader or as an individual contributor, to be treated as a partner is something that is very, very skillful and necessary, especially now today, which is why earlier I gave the advice, man, we get just relax, be patient, and let a couple things play out. Because when they come to you with that dotted line, solid line stuff, when they come to you, I need you to wear two hats. When they come to you with that bag of lemons, they come to you, we lost Rob. I need you to hold it down until we replace him. Or how long? Like, I need you to pump the brakes for a second and not be so eager. Like, and I'm talking to myself first. Not be so, right? Not be so eager to jump in, right, and sprinkle that pixie dust on it, right? Because what you don't get agreed upon up front is going to be assumed as standard operating procedures for you and your job on the back end.
That's a
No,
fact.
no, 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 no. You put that hat on, fam.
Yep.
You've been doing it for, so you can't say you volunteered. Like when you start asking for to be compensated for your value for now because you've been wearing a couple of different hats and you reporting to two people or more, and now you graduated into a professional, and it doesn't matter if you work 40 hours or 40 minutes, it's the results and the value you bring at the table, and then you go to be rewarded and compensated for your time and your value, and they say, well, nah, you agree to it, and now it's in your job description.
Boom.
We don't have to pay you no more for this. This is your job. As a matter of fact, that other job you're doing, that's only a weekend thing. That's only a couple extra hours a week anyway. So they will pull that on you. Please.
But it's in their best interest, right? You know what it is? We expect that people who make up organizations, and I feel like this is what you talked about in episode 1.
Uh-huh.
An organization, whether corporation, LLC, etc., 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 is a group of people that make up this organization. And their collective thought and acceptance of all these different things allows this place to move. Then there's people who they accept things just by not saying anything.
Right.
And then they make it so for all people who come behind them.
Right.
There was at some point in time somebody before you,
Accept.
anybody who's looking right now, who felt that pressure for that dotted line. And they ain't say nothing.
And
That
they ain't
first
say
person,
nothing.
that first person in that first row in the dotted line bureau. And they sat there and they was like, man,
Something ain't right.
something ain't right. But they got my best interest at heart. Oh well. And whether they did or not, at some point in time, there were people who did not have their best interests at heart. And
That's
those are the people who create the whole entire ecosystem of corporate trauma.
right.
Because they are out for themselves. They are here to extract value. They are trying to figure out how they can get water from a rock.
Mm-hmm. All right. And you know what? I heard somebody, my we well, we had him on as a guest.
Mm-hmm.
Life coach, Mr. Eugene Black. He told me
Mm-hmm.
one time, right? I was never more liked working in a corporation
Mm.
until after I showed them that I could lie with a straight face.
So I showed him like a lie with a straight face.
When I showed them that I was able
Mm-hmm.
to fudge the reality, right, and walk away
Mm-hmm.
from the situation as if what I that as if I believed what I was saying,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they knew that what I was saying wasn't necessarily the reality because I was privy to information that other people on the other side of the table were not. And when I was able to articulate that information, leaving things out, omitting important pieces, or just straight up not telling the truth, that's when the other people in the
Mm-hmm.
room started to feel comfortable and that they could trust me because I told a untruth or bent reality for the best interest of said organization or corporation or group of people that are recognized as one entity. And see, that stuck with me, right? Because until you understand the likelihood of that happening, there's not a whole lot that's going to make sense,
Mm-hmm.
right? Nah, Rob, you don't have two different jobs. We're just reimagining. It's not two different jobs. We just reimagine. Matter of fact, and that other job kind of changed. You're not going to have to do all of those things that you saw Jamal do before he left the organization. You're just going to be responsible. Bruh,
Mm-hmm.
I got two different jobs. Stop playing.
I got two different jobs. Stop playing. You know what is crazy? You know what's crazy? That's like you get on a basketball court and you got to play two people at one time.
Because your man ain't playing no
Cause your boy ain't playing no D. And then
game.
you over here trying to help on this end because he getting roasted. And then when your man score, you get yelled at because it's your man.
I'm helping, coach. I'm
But I'm
helping.
helping, coach. I've been helping all game. And now that he scored one bucket, I'm the bad guy. Yeah, but it's your guy. Oh,
Or
so
or how about this? Because Rob's really good at scoring
hmm
and we need him for the fourth
yeah.
quarter or the end of the game,
Yep.
he doesn't have to play any defense.
hmm
And that comes directly from the coach.
hmm
But the unsung hero has to play both ends of the court, has to play hard on defense and hard on offense. Well, why'd you get that loose ball? Why you getting that rebound? Well, it's 2 minutes to go and I'm tired. I've been playing both ends all night.
That's not acceptable.
Right? And then they start to say some, that's not your role. That's not his role. We don't pay him to play defense. We pay him to score.
You know what's the craziest thing about that also? You got all of us. We have to make sure that wherever we decide to work, whoever we decide to be in a relationship with, where we choose to go to school, the neighborhoods we want to stay in, make sure they align well,
Right.
right? Make sure the system works for you.
Right.
And now, granted, it's not about having group think, and it's not about everybody always being on board with all the things that you do.
Right.
But if you know you're a nice running back, and the more you touch the ball, the better you get, then you can't go to a team that's only going to let you run the ball 5 times a game,
It's not gonna work.
right? If you're a nice running back, I mean, a wide receiver, and they run the wing T offense, which is a whole bunch of running backs and running the ball, you could be the nicest wide receiver in the country. No one will know
No one will know.
because you won't have the opportunities. So when we talk about how that relates to the workplace, if you being intelligent and being able to see trends and find silver linings and being able to articulate different ideas and all these other things, you have to find a place that appreciates that.
Right.
And it's so often we're waiting for other people to figure out some of these things. So
Right.
for me, I'm always in a consistent place of where do I see myself at?
Mm-hmm.
Who do I see myself as? Am I changing? Am I evolving? Am I growing? Am I staying the same? And is there a place that appreciates who I see myself as? You know what I mean? And if I can find that place, I can show up and I can make jokes, I can laugh, and then in the same meeting, I could sound like one of the scientists, from Timbuktu.
Right.
You know what I mean? Well ahead of my time, dropping knowledge, and people are coming from all across, not just to get the word from the scripture, but also to learn about the old world and all the things that connect to it. You find your tribe, and it's so
Right.
often we giving up a lot of that.
Right. And if you find a place that you fit into and that place starts to change, either you change with it or you're going to have to find somewhere else to go. Don't get
Hmm.
caught up, right?
Hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with change, right? Especially if it grows you.
Hmm.
However, there's a like Dave Chappelle says, his father told him that there's a price, and once that price gets too expensive for you, you probably want to you probably want to withdraw.
Correct. And be okay with that.
And it's all right. It's all right.
Cause y'all know
Ecosystem.
me.
Yeah, there's more than one ecosystem.
I know some folks who they be like, and I know someone, and I think that I believe they got to an age where it was just like, I'm down for the fight. You know how some people they'll say I'm too old to fight. I'll just deal with it. There are some people who they get to a place where they're old enough to maintain a fight for those who come behind them.
Right.
Right. I don't know if I've gotten to that age. Better yet, I have to be at a place that I feel as if is worthy of my time. You know what I mean? At all points in time for me to deal with nonsense. Because
Right.
once I feel like stupid rules the day, I know that is not a place for me. I'm dead serious. Like once I realize that stupid is and stupid does, and this is what people respect, then that ain't the place for me. And I do a bunch of stupid stuff, but I doggone should know when I put my hat on of saying I'm about to put this work in, I'm hoping that we all on the same page. And if that's not what they respect, then that's not a place for me.
Facts. Good combo, man. But we hope that y'all all were benefited and edified by tonight's discussion. Um, there's a lot going on, and there are things that are moving, and then there are things that are staying the same in an environment that's changing. So don't get caught up in that corporate identity crisis of the organization that you might find yourself working for. And please, please do not be deceived by that dotted line, solid line reporting concept. You probably have two jobs or more, right? And we just have to be patient, take our time, relax, and understand uh, what's getting ready to happen by what's not being said. Because if, like Rob says, the total benefit that you have at stake to receive by anything you've been asked to do, that's not articulated up front, you probably want to look deeper into what it is that you're going to decide when the requests start to come to you, be it dotted line or you're trying to make sense out of an organization that's going through an identity crisis. So remember, y'all, we're here every Thursday, same time, 7 p.m. live, um, and that these conversations are extremely important as we go forward because nothing is going to be the same going forward. Y'all see that? All you gotta do is turn on the news. Rob, any last words? Your mic's off.
How about now? How
Yeah,
about
you're
now?
good. You're good now.
You know, wonderfully said. Uh, there's so much to be learned. There's so much to be taught. And at any point in time, you can find yourself in either chair, whether you're the teacher or the student. Um, and whenever it's time for you to be in one of those roles, just appreciate it because it's
Right.
something there for you. This is awesome conversation, bro, as always, and
As
I'm looking
always,
forward to next week.
yes. Until next week, remember corporate trauma is a sneaky passive trauma that will creep up on you, and when it does,
It is time to level up.
see y'all
Peace.
next week.
Later.